Hey, everybody. I'm just taking a minute to get me over to the CreateAWorld channel because I can see the chat. So I'm just getting myself acclimated. There we are. Okay, now the chat's available. Thank you for being here today. This is by my request. I want to start today by talking about my hair because I have not been able to get my hair cut for 3 weeks because I've been post recovery of my procedure, and I had too many other things I was trying to balance and leaving my hair out was going to have to be one of them. So whatever what you see is what you get. Um, the other thing is that the several people in the field of Tantra Maat watch solar flares. And someone had mentioned to me that they thought my high blood pressure might be related to the solar flares. And that just may be true because I woke up with a blood pressure of 160 over 79 this morning, and I haven't had anything even near that since I had my procedure. Now it's at 151. So I want to make a background for this conversation that is mine. I don't represent the views of anyone else that you see on the screen or anyone in the field of Tantra Maat. These are my views. And whether people in the field of Tantra Maat agree with those views or not is something that does not pertain to this conversation. I am a mystic and a seer and a prophetess. It is a tradition that is no longer considered valid. As near as I can understand, it's considered the um, oddness of this personality, uh, maybe even an egoic way to validate myself or to consider myself special. I don't know. I don't understand the egoic plane at all. But truthfully, over the next few years, us knowing what we are, as well as who we are, um, restores capabilities and skills that belong to creation. They don't necessarily belong to human beings. So when I start to pay attention to something, if I was Christian, evangelical Christian, I would say something like, the power of the Lord is upon me. And you all would probably buy it, or at least think that there was that validity of possibility in creation. I'll ask Jesus later if the power of the Lord is upon me, but I do know the power of creation is upon me. And that what I've always been able to be counted on for and will continue to be counted on for, because it isn't personality centric and it's not secular centric, is that I will always do what creation asks me to do. And it's very basic what my source base asks me to do. Do you know it's very recent that there were gods that were considered source bases? Before that, before that, what was considered the source base was the planet, the mother. And well, actually, there's one in between. So the original source base, we as humans, when we started to create civilizations, social structures, as our relationship was with the mother. The name goddess came much later when there were suddenly gods and goddesses. What came from the mother was principles, Tantra, not my name, but Tantra, the so above, so below, and Maat, also not my name. Harmony, balance, symmetry, proportion, grace, and beauty. these were what were operating states of many civilizations you can read about in Empathic Civilizations, the book Empathic Civilizations. Long before this obedience to a god or to a goddess ever came into existence. So my memory, my source base is pre-Diluvian. It's before the flood, because the flood was kind of what got humanity's attention, that something was going on that was being used um, on behalf of some kind of intent of a god. Uh, from a planetary point of view, it was simply a geopathic event. It was simply a geopathic event. The addition of the story of the flood and Noah was the God that took advantage or used that event or sourced it. We'll never know. My mind doesn't live at that level. Maybe some of yours does, but mine sure doesn't. So humanity had a series of events, that one we have in our history, notable, had a series of events that um, produced a trauma base for the entire species. And if you read in my book, You Was the Language of Creation, sorry, The Language of Creation, Your Original Design, if you read that book, it talks about what happens to a human system when it becomes traumatized. And we're not going to go in that today because you can read it in the book. And some of you will, and some of you won't. But when I get a message, when I'm asked to do something by the powers and forces of creation of which I am a part, that operate on behalf of humankind, who I affectionately call the realms of the beloveds, that means that which loves this planet and her forms in this planet, that love that which nurtures, protects, and cares for this planet and her forms. I follow suit. And the people on this call are familiar with some of that. I had a period of time where I followed suit with what was called the GOD matrix. I had a period of time I followed suit with this spirals of being. I have now am following suit with the magician of self. If we wait for humanity, if we wait for humanity to catch up with what is going on in the greater systems of reality, the danger is it will continue to perpetuate the existing norms. It will continue to perpetuate the secular beliefs. It will continue to perpetuate a story that we're living into in our secular world, that there's an enemy, that we're flawed as human beings, although there is some technical truth to that. There's more to the story than meets the eye. That somehow we're alone in the universe, that there's nothing operating on our behalf, that we're affected the electromagnetic system that has high solar flares right now, which I now believe the people that said my blood pressure may be related to that, because it's been pretty much okay for a while. So we are stuck in stories and stuck in beliefs. That's fine to have. It just doesn't serve our evolution. It definitely doesn't serve our ability to evolve. So it slows down the evolutionary process. So you have two camps of consciousness that you're welcome to participate in. And there's no way you're not going to be one of those camps. No way. There aren't people exempt from these camps. One, you'll be at the effect of the evolutionary process. Two, you'll educate yourself. You'll listen for information that resonates for you. that let you be a participant in your own evolutionary process. So these Fridays, my birthday month, by the way, the flowers behind me are from my guy. All my favorite colors and my favorite flowers that he did not know were my favorite colors and my favorite flowers. Very interesting, don't you think? So the phenomenon that we're in today is I'm operating on your behalf. The you, not you, your individual personalities, but the part of you that is interested in its own evolutionary process, is interested in its own evolution, and will be drawn here and drawn to other things, not to just get information about what's going to happen so we can gather water, but to be interested in how that is part of our evolution, how that is part of what we are moving with on behalf of our evolution. So I'll be doing some side notes in this conversation because my whole intent in these conversations, my whole intent is to presence what there is to be present to. So each of you in your own way can open up into what is yours to open up into and reflect upon what is yours to reflect upon. I am not giving you outside knowledge for you to believe or think is true. Ever how you digest the information, ever how you process the information, it will stir your evolutionary process, whether you're interested in it or not. Of course, the easiest way to not be interested in it is don't listen to the recording. Just like other recordings, we don't listen to, they're just not part of our interest. And that's totally fine. Each of us colors in a different way, and each of us has interests that seek certain resonance, seek certain reflection in the world around us for us to carry on in what we hold to be real. So, and all realities are allowed on this planet. There's no wrong reality. That's a human vote. That's not a planetary vote. The scorpion is as welcome as the bunny. The poisonous snake is as welcome as the benign snake. We're the ones that are caught in right and wrongdoing. I watched a beautiful Gurudev, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. He did a beautiful talk on karma, and he must have said, yeah, it's on YouTube. You can just look up karma and Gurudev, you'll get it. But he did a great job of it because it talked about at different levels of consciousness, different occurrences of perception occur. And so in the present world we're in, the only perception we have available, it's very retarded, is right, wrong, good, bad. It's very retarded. It's a very retarded perception because sometimes we're good and sometimes we're bad in those dictates. But if we pin ourselves in good or bad, or we worry that we're good or bad, then we are caught in the wheel of karma. That's the lowest level of the wheel of karma anyone could ever find themselves in, because they can't pay attention to anything else. There's no smelling the roses, or there's no being in longer timelines that operate on behalf of larger stories that we're part of. And that's really the focus of today, that we are part of a larger story that started a long time ago. And we're working out something in my book, in my Kindle book. I think it's Kindle. In my Kindle book, Have Them Be Not Afraid. I didn't publish it to be popular, and it's reading material. And in the Gaza Strip right now, because it was a prophecy about what's happening in the Middle East at this time. Tomorrow I start a biogeometry class that's being internet. The Zoom link is where the source space is in Egypt. which is part of the continent of Africa. And these extreme solar flares are hitting Africa tomorrow. So the only reason I'm saying this to you is this is the level of relationship I have with what I'm paying attention to. I'm paying attention to the interactive, interrelated, interdependent relationship I as the source space of the field of Tantra Maat have with electromagnetic energy. In regard to have them be not afraid, I did that to make a place for something that I'm paying attention to. In the Gaza Strip that I was given the information of in 1994, that's mine to be present to, mine to open up into, mine to be part of on behalf of everything moving to the next greater whole. And everything moving to the next greater whole is evolution. That is what it is. That is evolution. So it's no accident I've now been invited to be part of a monthly conversation that moves me to tears, makes me so personally happy, with women in Jerusalem and women in Palestine, and now men are being added, and women in the United States and Turkey and other areas that literally feel by coming together, we can create a generative field within which the trauma can be transmuted into life force energy, one of the fundamental principles in the field of Tantra Maat. So I'm only introducing you to this because I can't get down to another level. I can't operate at some levels. They're not bad levels. The first floor of a building's no better or worse than the top floor of the building. But I have to meet this conversation at the level I operate. I also have to do it so I can keep alive, because I just went through a 5-month process that let me know that if I continue to try to operate at a certain vibrational frequency, I'm not going to get to survive here much longer. So I'm in my own transmutative wholeness evolutionary process, which is unique to me. It's not anything I can teach. It's not anything that will apply to other people. But it does mean I need to operate at the level that I was designed to operate at. And that'll be true for all of you too, whether you like it or not. Like I said, you have 1 or 2 camps you'll play in. You'll continue to be at the effect of it, or you'll start to line up with it. And your survival system will do everything to tell you you won't survive if you step out of the norm. If you step away from work, if you step away from relationship, if you step away what you're presently doing, if you step away from the geopathic continent you're on, everything tells you to stay and hope for the best. And that's a good place. That camp will receive as much grace as the camp of being generative. The at the effect camp of humanity will see the same grace, the same help. One doesn't buy you better help. Both will receive help. They're just different. They're qualitatively different. One, I think, has more sense of being alive in the matter, and the other one is in the boat. The other one is helping or row the boat. That's all the difference there is, and there's no good or bad attached to it whatsoever. I'm just taking care of my role in the evolutionary process. I'm not taking care of the people in the field of Tantra Maat. I'm not taking care of my children, which means I'm not taking care of people, and I'm not taking care of my children. It's just that if I can support the evolutionary process that is presently occurring, and I can use the established coherence that's present in the field of Tantra Maat, and I can move into biogeometry, and that Egyptian remembrance of harmonization of humanity with the electromagnetic field of the planet, and I can move into the women of the heart in regard to Gaza and Israel and Turkey and the Middle East and everything that's going to happen there, then I am operationally sound in other things that may come my way. I am operationally sound in doing what's mine to do, being what's mine to be, and see what I end up having. Having probably shouldn't be our main interest right at the moment, because when everything is evolving and everything is moving to the next greater whole, let's say being is first, doing is section. By the way, if you watch that link that Shri did, it's really beautiful because anybody that knows what karma is action, and right or wrong, good or bad. Karma is action, and action accrues consequences, some good consequences, some bad consequences. It's really black and white. It has no moral or ethical code. And it was fascinating it's a law. It's a law, it's a principle. Tantra is a principle. So above, so below. What occurs above occurs below. What occurs below occurs above. These are principles. And he just did a really good job of pulling it apart. And it was also fascinating to watch. The questions was constantly looking for a moral code, constantly looking for an ethical code, part of the entrapment. If when you get out of that moral and ethical code, you become part of larger stories that have been going on for a long time. And inside those larger stories, you begin to embody, you begin to have a sense of this is mine to do, this is mine to be, because you're part of a larger story than a moral or fighting a moral or ethical code. And right now we're in that moray. We're all in the mesmerization of moral and ethical codes. Probably I'm riling a few people in saying this, but that isn't part of a whole system response. That doesn't give you what it can give you what's yours to do and yours to be. But you'll be doing inside of right, wrong, or good, bad. You won't be doing it inside of yours to be and yours to do. Just saying. So I want to introduce someone. Um, Interestingly enough, one of the people that was fundamental in saving my life the last 5 months was Dr. Rupa Chari. And today is her mother, her beautiful mother, who remembered me when I met them many, many years ago and always interacted with me. One of the very few people that always interacted me with consistent with my I am self, one of my I am selves, and one of my source-based selves. And so she asked me today to honor her and say a prayer for her, and because this was her the anniversary of the day that she passed away 2 years ago. Interestingly enough, this man that I am going to um, introduce to you, Zechariah Stitchin, he was also Jewish, and they honored him on October 9th, 2021, 2 years after he passed away, the anniversary of the day he passed away. Interesting. These are patterns and things you begin to observe. You can't interpret and you can't translate them because there's something that suggests that creation knows you're paying attention right, that you're moving with field phenomenon on behalf of all life, where it's yours to be and yours to do. So that I'm gonna, like I said, there'll be a little added innuendos and things that I will say to you. It's also fascinating that I start biogeometry tomorrow in Egypt, that the Zoom calling is coming from Egypt, and that's when the electromagnetic energy is, Africa's going to get the worst of it. And Egypt's in Africa, for those of you that don't know. Africa's a continent. So all these interactive, interrelated, interdependent aspects that we are is really messing with us right now because we're separate from the world around us. And yet nothing outside of us thinks we're separate from it. Nothing doesn't care, actually. Nothing outside us is operating with us like we're separate from it. So we should we should know that we'll be left alone, that we won't be affected by things that is part of the evolutionary pattern of the entire planet. So the planet's evolving with all the electromagnetic energy that now roars around the planet. She's seeking a harmonization. She's seeking to harmonize it with all her life forms. That's because that's how she's designed. That's what she's designed to do. Now, the question is, are there human beings that can get in touch with that? Can get in touch with that. That's why I built the field of Tantra Maat. It's not even though it's used secularly, it wasn't designed for that. It was designed to keep a relational field going, and intra-related and interdependent. Interdependent means we care about each other and what happens to each other. Interactive activity that would continue to bring information in, that allowed people to be informed. And the consciousness of a humanity is informed whether the personality of the human being is informed or not. So Zecharia Sitchin was one of the few I'm reading this, one of the few scholars able to read and interpret ancient Sumerian and Akkadian clay tablets. He was born 1920, died 2010. Based on his best-selling 12th Planet, on the text, the actual writings from the ancient civilizations of the Near East, drawing both widespread interest and criticism. His controversial theories on Anunnaki origins of humanity have been translated into more than 20 languages and featured on radio and television around the world. So that's what I'm introducing, Zecharia Sitchin. But when I read his 12th Planet, it filled in blanks inside of me that I had come with a memory, a fragmented memory. And it actually activated a memory inside of me that filled in the blanks. Now, here's the thing that's really important. Your history, your cellular history, it comes from different arenas of existence. You may not relate to this arena of existence at all. You may have been all tucked away in Antarctica at some point or on another planet when this particular historical event occurred. But it's pretty interesting that where he found the clay tablets that he transcribed were not only in Egypt, they were also in Easter Island. They were also in Machu Picchu. They were also in other parts of the earth that you couldn't easily get to in the period of time, according to what we know about things, in the period of time with which they were written. So my point in this conversation, and then if people want to share afterwards, they can do whatever points they have coming up. But my point is that we did actually get messed with. The DNA of humanity did actually get messed with. And by the way, that story isn't the only story I have. I also was part of a project in either Stanford or Harvard. And I don't think it was Harvard. I never can remember. I don't think it was Stanford either, but I can't remember where it was. Where those of us that were in deep meditation or in deep trance states were asked to come and do a DNA scan. And they found out something interesting, that in the human DNA, there is an etching, there's a glitch in the human matrix. And that some people, some of which went psychotic, by the way, or were hypersensitive, like I was, didn't have that etching in the DNA. They seem to be able to transcend it. And I'm using the word transcending, not because I believe I'm a transcendent being. Believe me, I'm not, especially after the last 5 months. I am mortally mortal. But I'm capable of being present to things. The possibility is that I'm present to things that other human beings are not able to be easily present to because they have a glitch in their matrix. That doesn't mean I'm better or worse. In fact, I barely survived it as a child and in my first formulative years, my first half century years. But what was also proved and became established scientific evidence was the fascination of the human genome is that it's always trying to get back to itself. So the truth is we cannot stay messed with because there's this yearning, this craving. That's what the creation templates, what do you call it? Uh, nourish, nourish that energy that allows that matrix to be broken, that matrix, that glitch in the matrix that has humanity's loop, 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 loop at a low vibrational frequency, at a lesser frequency than what they're actually designed to be. So that made sense. All these religions about getting back to ourselves, about becoming whole, about finding ourselves again, about these powers and forces of creation that are supporting the restoration of humanity's, in my words, original design. And we're in the epicenter of one of those over the next 3 years, 24, 25, 26. We're in the epicenter. You can read about this everywhere. I'm not doing anything other than what other people are doing. I'm just making sure that creation knows I'm doing my part because it is my part to do. And my question would be to you, do you even know creation exists? And if you do know creation exists, do you know your source base or source bases? Because some of us have multiple ones. And are you interdependent, interrelated, and interactive with your source base? Are you being what you came here to be and doing what you came here to be? And your source base is not the world around you, but your source base is your direct link with creation. That's the evolutionary process right now. That is where it's evolving. We're returning to our source base. So a long, long time ago, there, there was no right or wrong doing. There was a period of time, the period I remember, where the God, what we would call gods, which are basically powers and forces greater than ourselves, walked with the earthlings and walked in adoration of them. They were beloved of. They loved them, and the earthlings loved the gods that came around. And if you look at Celtic mythology, the one I know the best, they loved acting like human beings. They stole cattle and they did, but for them, it was human play. It wasn't moral or ethical code. It was just the play. And because if you're immortal, you play a game. Don't the kids watch video games where they're in a war or video games where they're building cities? That would be how the gods would have and goddesses would have come into this world we call human being. The most fascinating thing in Stitchin's book, 12th Planet, that I find the most fascinating is that on in the tablets, the Sumerian and Akkadian tablets coming from different parts of the world, there was this word Lord. And the tablets that were written way before the flood, way before that time, the word Lord meant my beloved. So in the script, the God would call the earthling their beloved, and the earthling would call the God their beloved. After the flood, the word Lord was a different word in Sumerian. And that word translated means the servant of God. And then it goes deeper. So we move from being the beloved in our psychology, in our psyche, back there somewhere. We move from being the beloved of another beloved that had powers and forces greater of ourselves, that love this planet, love to come play here, and love to be part of the evolutionary process of this planet. And then we have post-diluvian recorded, it could have happened before, it did happen before the flood itself, where these other gods came that You'll have to read the book to find out. I'm not gonna mess around with your mind and ask you to believe things that you can't believe, that don't seem to make sense to you. All I'm going to do is take pieces of the information that are relative to why there's a need for humanity to take on its own evolutionary process. And what might be maybe two elements of that. I'm not saying it is two elements, but what might be two elements of that. One element might be to quit having an enemy, quit having for or against, also in the language of creation, your original design. All my books are transmissions. They're not data, they're transmissions. They're to help your mind recover itself. So that might be real. That what if you just gave up there's an enemy and you paid attention to what's yours to do, including standing in front of something and saying no more. But that's just a system. That's not an enemy. It's not an enemy. It's just a system that is aberrated and no longer operates on behalf of the greater whole of which this planet is a part. Harmony, balance, symmetry, proportion, and grace. It just stopped operating consistent with that. It got aberrated. It got used by a species of existence that came here to use this planet for its own goals and use the earthlings of this planet for its own intent. Why we fear God is memory, not psychology. Why we can feel the love of what we might call God is memory, not psychology. Some of us have memory, some of us don't. Some of us have trauma related to cellular memory that is horrific. And I had an incredible conversation this morning, probably one of the most beautiful conversations I've had in a long time. The lovely young woman from Ireland. We had a event between each other, and I wanted to talk to her and didn't know the week before she'd wanted to talk to me, so we talked this morning. But we were able to talk about it at the frequency level, at the vibrational level, that let us see that event had been generated by a much larger story that we were both part of, and that we had made it through it. We had not ever made each other the enemy. And not only did we make it through, we saw the value in it. And this is a very important point. When we do something that hurts someone else, that is wrong. But sometimes it is part of a larger story. It just doesn't justify the action, but it can be that it's part of something much bigger. My glasses are really bugging me. Hold on a second. There, I just need to level them. I don't think they're going to level. All right, there. That's almost it. I keep needing to go to the eye store to get them fixed, and I don't do it. So they also fall off my face if I lean over. So the point is that could be one. One would be to no longer have an enemy, to have something that you are rematrixing on behalf of all life. But it doesn't mean what was there is the enemy. It just means it's a system that you don't think works well for how the original nature, the original design of adoring each other and loving each other and playing with each other might be valuable, might really be valuable. Even the most peaceful of people used to play games. We could have called them war games. They used to play with sticks. But they did it to build their strength, stamina, capacity in an unruly planet that could have visitors at any moment that might not operate on behalf of this planet's best interest. But they didn't have to be the enemy. You could work with principles and values, and you could be clear about the system of life that you belong to. The other one probably a little bit more challenging, which is what this beautiful young woman and I got to discover today. We got to experience ourselves as the beloveds, each other's beloved, because we were part of a larger story we didn't remember we were part of, and then we could remember the larger story we were part of and how that larger story supported us moving into the next recursion of wholeness that both of us were beginning to experience. By the way, by very challenging and painful means, by the way. That's the other thing. We think pain is wrong. No, pain, as long as life has been here, is the most evolutionary tool we've got. So is bliss, by the way. They're just two sides of the spectrum that humanity has ethical and moral opinions about. So that's what I wanted to bring to the party today. The Stitchin's book is slow go. I prefer the audio. But it's really worth it to wake up the memory inside you. That's what we're doing in the Magician of Self. We're waking up the remembrance and the recall, and we're waking up the remembrance and and memory that's been buried. And because if we can begin to remember things that seem relevant to us, what we reflect upon and gain nourishment and strength from, then we begin to move out of the looping matrix of right, wrong, good, bad, etc., and so on. So with that said, I'm going to pull myself off pin, see if anybody has anything to say that is in our collaborator group. I'm going to look at the what's the word I want? The chat. And then if not, we'll go on. So over to all of you, if you have anything to add or comment on or reflect upon.
Tantra, I was just gonna ask if you have a second once you looked at the chat. Because there may be people that listen to this that are new to the field of Tantra Maat, if you might want to just speak briefly to what the Magician of Self is and how they might become a part of that work.
I don't, so the Magician of Self was called into being because something became available to humanity I'd never seen before. I tried to do the Magician of Self in my 20s. I'm 77. I'll be 78 this month. But humanity was really caught in recovering from trauma. And so the identification was trauma oriented, trauma based. But then Deb Merchant, Dr. Deb, is one of the collaborators who's not with us today. She and I I got these templates, and then out of these templates, Deb was a social worker. She began to ask the question, well, what do people do once their identity recovers from being traumatized? Who are they? How do they discover who they actually are and who they might have been if they weren't traumatized? If their personality wasn't based on a traumatized past? Then that went into not only the traumatized past of what we were born into, which was traumatized parents and a traumatized society, but what if there was another form of identity that actually went back to who we are as part of the power of creation itself? Who is that? And that's how the Magician of Self was born. It was attempted 3 times, once in my 20s, once in my 50s. But I was very aware from the people that were coming to me to do engagements and people that were acting for activations that there was this, and also the multidimensional personas, that there were these deeper natures of self that were rising, that once had capacities, once had strength, stamina, and capacities that were coming from beyond the grief of the loss of them. So what we've begun to notice in doing the Magician of Self is there's always this period of grief, because the grief has to come back up, because it's the through line to the remembrance. It's the through line to the sense of self that got destroyed, that once operated on behalf, or selves that once operated on behalf of all life here. So that I would say that's the magician of self. You want to just contact me at the office of Tantra Maat because I have to talk to people that want to get in it now. The people that started the magician of self with me, let's just say it's a real rock and roll engagement, and and you have to be able to really honestly, it's why I started this conversation. Is you actually have to be able to be self-sourced or hold enough tightly to yourself that you can move with yourself on behalf of your own evolutionary process. But that's what I saw, Janice. What I saw was there was enough people that were starting to, I mean, it's not that we aren't kicking and screaming and wailing and sobbing and laughing and, walking into walls and a few other thousand things, but there's a steadiness inside the human psyche. It knows that where we've been isn't where we're going. And wanting to be on the side of that, even ignorant and in the unknown. And then of course the emotional field has to evolve, the human psyche evolves, everything evolves. That's what I said to the young woman from Ireland. I said, I am an empty shell right now. I have evolved out of a trauma base that was deeply buried in my body. And I don't have a clue about an aspect of me that never got born, that never got a place here, never had a chance here. But my skills and my capacities are scaling because they were already here, but they were suppressed by the personality framework I was in. It was insufficient to the power and force of the beingness or the selfness that carried them. All right, over to you.
Yeah, and so those of us that are in the magician of self, we have, we have various times that we come together and different things that we explore. And I think one of the really important parts of this conversation is that when you are choosing to move in exploration of the new, and and for instance, if you have found yourself, Tantra talked about sort of the two camps that you might be in, and if you found yourself in the camp of being at the effect of evolution and you decide, I think I'd like to try the other way, it's really, really helpful to be in community with people who are also on that same journey. Because, when you're in the camp of there's right and wrong and there's enemy, and then you have all of this dialogue in your head that you're having to battle of, well, but that doesn't make sense because that's not how I was taught, and that blah, 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 blah. And so when you can be with other people who are also in this place of, of shifting their perspective and voting on a different way of showing up in the world, it just can help you feel a little less weird. Or at least you can all be weird together, but to me, that's the benefit of being parts of communities like this one.
I want to respond to that because I'm trying to put something in the chat and it won't go. So I'm going to read what I said. So someone said, you're giving me more to think about body-wise. The past spring, my nervous system started to frizz again, and a flavor of anxiety first started 10 years ago. I have had to do a lot to become functional again, pondering what is happening that may have affected my system. And what I responded was, this is why a collective I couldn't even risk doing this conversation if the field of Tantra Maat hadn't started in 2014. Because the field of Tantra Maat creates a collective coherence that diminishes the impact points. See, human beings are not designed to be isolated from one another and isolated from life. And part of the trauma recovery was we had to isolate to survive. So either you restored your direct link with creation or your direct link, you could call it nature, God, whatever your source base is, whatever that is. It all started with restoring our relationship with nature because we could feel our coherency there. We could feel in unity with the nature. But the miracle of the field of Tantra Maat in its klutzy self is that it has reached a certain coherence. We're safe with each other. We can hear each other. We are multiple interests come in, so we receive information from multiple sources. But when we're isolated, since we're not designed to be separated from the greater whole of which we're a part, which is the one soul human, then our nervous system's fried. But also, Lisa, there, this is a evolutionary issue. This is actually an evolutionary issue because we are, this is what we're actually going through. This isn't like something we have choice over. This is something we're actually going through is our nervous systems are what are trying to restore itself back into its original nature of its original design. It wants to register connection. It wants to register being part of the movement of creation. It wants to register much higher frequency than our dulled down nervous system has had to has become accustomed to. In other words, we're not, it's in the first chapter. I recommend you read it again. It's in the first chapter of Light Creation, the Original Design, that our trauma, our systems are waking back up again. And while it can look like something we want to suppress back down, the truth is it'd be better to be in an energy field, any energy field. It can be evangelical as long as you're not going to kill anybody because of it. You know, it can be any energy system as long as that energy system is operating on behalf of self, others, and life, because that buffers your nervous system coming back online and being part of the greater whole. Did I do that well enough, Janice? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, just that, and so in to me, it's about deliberate choice of community, right? Because when you're a child, you're raised in whatever community you were born into. And then when we move into this adult space, we start to look at, well, who am I really? What is mine to do really? And then recognizing that there's communities that you're going to connect with and communities that you're not going to connect with. And, again, no right or wrong there, but that what you're looking for is, I heard in a call I was on yesterday, that find the people that run like you will be the people who run with you. And so, I think it's a crucial time for us to find the communities that are in coherence with what we're at work about.
Individually.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you're at work about, that key element of what you said, Janice, is being at work about something. Action, karma, the real definition. Being in action on behalf of self, others, and or life. Yeah, I agree with that.
In
The
the same,
one of the things I want to add to that in the conversation this morning, no accident, it was this morning. The thing that held her was actually the field of Tantra Maat, that because there was an element of something was being worked through, and the principles and the tenets were still present in the people's conversations in the field, while inadvertently I had hurt her terribly without meaning to. And but it held because of the coherency, the relatedness in the field. And these are principles that once operated as a collective whole. These aren't things where I'm adding as a remedy for an issue. This is actually how paradise actually occurs. It occurs in the relational field with ourselves and ourselves and ourself and others and ourselves and creation. And understanding that this is a dual life. This is a paradox realm. This is a both and realm. It's not an either or realm. We have all of it. We have both sides of all equations. Even colors are complementary of each other. And if we go too far, it has to be a certain way. We throw everything off alignment, even ourselves. Go ahead.
so it just makes me think about, when you think about fire and water, I mean, from one angle, you could look at them as quote unquote opposing forces. And yet in a human existence, they they both operate on behalf of life for us, right? We need them both. So that to me, that's the both end. But what you were saying about action tantra, so in this same call that I referenced a minute ago, she talked about the fact that overwhelm is often stuck inspiration. And so that when something comes to you that is yours to do and you don't do it, it gets stuck in you and then becomes, and so she was saying it's better to, if you're asking creation for guidance, it's better to not ask than to ask and not do. So so I think that, and part, to me, part of that evolution is the okay, and so now what? So what's the thing that I'm going to do? But from a place of joy as opposed to obligation.
That's interesting because I found an old cassette and going through everything when I moved here, and it was overwhelmed, creative frustration, the gift of creative frustration. And it's funny, it was a cassette. I think I did it in 1979. But that's part of what's going on right now, us old timers. Everything we talked about is now coming back fresh in the new ones, in the new wise men and wise women, because they're fundamental aspects of wholeness. They're fundamental aspects of being part of creation. It's very fun to see. I don't know when it was, last year or the year before, I realized that all is well. I just want to shorten the evolutionary timeline. That's all I want to do, because evolution's inevitable, but conscious beings have the ability to move the timeline forward at a much more rapid pace than just being at the effective. In fact, being at the effective, it slows the evolutionary process for human beings, including their extinction. I mean, there is a timeline to evolution. If those whales hadn't gotten in that water after they'd walked on land, they might not have existed. Go ahead.
It just makes me think about Carolyn Mace talking about the fact that individuals evolve at a faster rate than institutions. And
Yes.
so I also think that that's one of the things that we're seeing in terms of the breakdown of so much, which on one hand is very alarming, and yet I've heard Tantra say a number of times recently that evolution also means devolution, right? They coexist. And so we have all of these institutions that have been running things for quite a while, and they're not necessarily on behalf of our wholeness. And so,
or evolution.
right, exactly. And so, it's then stepping outside of those boxes where the sweet spots really are, I think, right now.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'm going to complete the call. Here's my offer to the people on the call, is that this will be posted on CreateAWorld. My apologies. I did not go into CreateAWorld to read if there are any questions to be brought forward this time. But why I didn't was I wanted to talk about that there is an actual documented history that something did happen to humanity, and that we were pushing against our own creation matrix that got aberrated at a cellular level, and that our consciousness is capable of evolving it. And I know it because I've done it and I've seen other people do it. And it's Carlos Castaneda calls it the Nagua, the ghost that follows you around, and you constantly is there, and you grow more powerful and more capable in the face of it. But I'm also offering to Liz and Electra, if they have something to say, you can post your own videos on CreateAWorld. You can post your own blog, and you all can ask your own questions and post your own points of view and your own blog, because whether we like it or not, it happens in coherence. And coherence is everybody's present to what they're present to, opening up into what there is to open up into, and having what there is to have. It isn't opinionated. it's what we're present to. And the more divert, the more we're out, before more we're being true to ourselves in our speaking, not true to what we think is real. I'm sorry, think is right. The more we're being true to what we're present to and sharing our personal experiences and what we're personally using to evolve ourselves, the more we feed the collective energy. Look, I come from the times of people following a single leader. And Janice hit on something evolutionary. And as now we follow ourselves as a collective community. And it's in our collective sharing that we evolve, not in following just one person. And on that, we will close 2.